The murder trial of Christian Rivera making headlines yesterday and perhaps the most fiery day of the trial thus far, as the defense is trying to undermine the entire case on the fact that the investigators were under intense pressure to solve the missing persons case. For more on this, we're going to turn to internationally known attorney and co-host of the Reasonable Doubt podcast, Mark Garrigus. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rachel. How are you?
Doing well. Now, day 5 of the trial, the defense attorney seems very adamant that police cut corners and left avenues unexplored in their rush to name a person here, and that seems to be the route they're taking. What was your take?
Well, it was very interesting. Normally, you see back-to-back opening statements. This is a case where the defense reserved their opening statement and did it at the beginning of the defense case. And Jennifer Fries, who was the lawyer who delivered the opening statement, I think did a very workmanlike job in framing the issues, and then promptly got into some DNA analysis that showed that there was evidence of other unexplained or unidentified indications of people in the trunk, because you might remember we talked about that there was some blood samples taken from the trunk. Then they had the Mollie Tibbetts' ex-boyfriend up there and started talking about his temper issues and fidelity issues, and there were a number of objections by the prosecution, mostly overruled by the judge, and ultimately they're trying to do some or sow some seeds of reasonable doubt here, and I think they had some small wins. Ultimately, at the end of the day, part of the problem they have is, what do you do about the so-called confession or admission combined with the, at least if you believe them, that the defendant here led them to Mollie Tibbetts' body. Those are the kinds of underlying problems you've got to come over.
Yeah, thinking of people watching this case, following along, and the jury trying to factor in, okay, we're told that he admitted and led them to the body. How would he know any of that if he didn't do it? But then we did see, as you mentioned, the boyfriend. They pointed out that he only called her once that day she was missing. And as you mentioned, a lot of things about his fidelity. Do you think that the jury is going to believe these things as possibly there could be somebody else involved? Or, as you mentioned, all they have to do is point out reasonable doubt?
Well, arguing reasonable doubt is always kind of a difficult position to be in if you're a defense lawyer. Jurors want to and strive to try to get it right. And so there has to be some kind of a pathway or alternative theory here. And it doesn't have to be, remember, reasonable doubt does not mean that the defense has to prove their case. What it does mean is that they have to show that there's a reasonable alternative to this gentleman's guilt. If that ex-boyfriend or boyfriend did not come across the way that most jurors would expect an ex-boyfriend to come across, because, by the way, that's how people judge witnesses, is through their own prism or experience, then they may have somebody who wakes up in the morning on the day that they're deliberating and says, you know what, I'm just not so sure. I have a doubt, and it seems reasonable. Why is it, as you said, he only called once? Why is it that there's other strands of or indications of DNA in the trunk of the car? Why is it that there are no fingerprints on various items? That was another piece of evidence that was in there yesterday.
Yeah, and Mark, I think something that's interesting is just watching the reaction of people to this case. Going into it, it seemed like closed case, no questions asked. Everyone was convinced before the trial even started, which we know we have to go through due process. But now it does seem that there is some doubt from just the public in regards to this case. Real quickly, we have less than 30 seconds. Do you expect that we'll hear from Rivera on the stand?
I do not think so. I think one of the reasons that they put on the woman who is the mother of his child, one of the reasons that they put on...
We had an ex-girlfriend and his aunt, yes.
Yeah, and his aunt. I think that's to paint a picture of him, and they did a pretty good job of that. They brought in character evidence that he wasn't violent and things of that nature. That generally sets the tone for trying to humanize him, and by doing that, you're hoping that you don't have to put him on the stand, because then the whole focus of the trial would shift to how did he do as opposed to how did the prosecution's evidence do.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if those character witnesses did add significance in regards to when the jury makes their decision. All the time we have for now, Mark Garrigus. I see that changed background. It is, of course, coffee with Baby Bump and Mark.
They do it. They do it just for Baby Bump and coffee with Rachel in the morning.
Always a pleasant surprise, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.